Assalamu alaikum. Well, the other day I was working on this app design and I found that we have this slide over here and you can move it left or right like that, and as you move it, it should scale up or scale down. Okay, so the real effect is here. So as you see, this is a bit bigger than these two sides and it scales up. So as you change it, or it scales down like here, or scales up like that. Okay, now the scaling up and down, the basic part has been done with this page view builder. So here I have this page view builder. Okay, so within get builder I have this page view builder. Well, we know that if we use page view builder, we can scroll left and right. We know this, but the default setting of page view builder doesn't allow you to scale up and down. Okay, let me make a little bit of change so that we understand what's going on. So I would come over here, and here so I'll change 10 to 5. So we'll see they're coming closer. Right now the distance changed. And also I'll work on the scale factor. And now instead of 9, I would do scale factor of 8. Okay, now you see it's much smaller than this one. But if you drag it, this one becomes smaller and the next one becomes bigger. It goes for same over here. But now there is, of course, a plugin that I've used before that's called carousel slider. You can achieve the same thing with the carousel slider, but it has one problem. It doesn't allow any child on the top of your slide. Okay, at least I couldn't find it or do it. So carousel slider doesn't really work with this, like where you will have this child on the top of it. Okay, so that's why I decided to build this page view builder, the math part, the algorithm, on my own. So here I have done it, and I wanted to share with you. Okay, all right. So this is my default code, so that's why it works like this. And in the default code, I have this math over here. So as you see, I'm using matrix 4 and a lot of calculation over here, there, and that's why we say this thing. Okay, all right. So, and then at the same time, I'm using transform widget over here. And this transform widget is actually taking this matrix and do this transformation of scaling up and down. Okay, all right. So now we'll need to know one more important concept. So what I will do, I'll remove this code, the code that is responsible for scaling up and down, and then I'll start from the scratch how to do this scaling up and down and smooth transition between the slides. Okay, so here is my default page builder. And default page builder, it works like this. Of course, you can scroll left and right. Okay, well, it doesn't work now. It doesn't matter though. We'll just focus on the scaling part. Okay, so this is the default page builder or page view builder. And here is one interesting thing we have to know about the default page view builder is that it takes a controller, as you can see, as a property. And we have defined a controller over here, and we called it page controller. Okay, and another thing we did over here, so we have a function that we return. We call it build page. Well, build page is a function over here. Okay, and over here within it, I've used the stack widget, and within stack, I have a container and another align widget. Well, the container, this one is responsible for showing this image over here. And on the top of it, I have this align widget, which is responsible for this one. So for overlapping purpose, you should use container and other containers or widgets like this. Then you can achieve this result. But once again, the design is not the purpose. So I'm not going to show you that what's inside or not. But if you want the code, just check out the link below. Okay, it doesn't really matter, so the code is there. But now let's see how can we transform this one to the one we saw early? Okay, all right. So now I'm going to go back to this thing which I was talking, that page view builder, it takes a property which is page controller, or a controller actually. Now here we have this page controller. Now let's take a look at page controller. So over here, this is our page controller, and page controller has a property which is called viewport, so you can set it up. So here 85, 0.85, so 85%. All it does, it takes from the available visible screen, it takes 85% from it. Okay, so that's what it's doing. So for example, you can change it. You can change it to 9, so it will take 90% of the screen. Okay, so as you see, it took more space. All right, now once again, this space is coming from the padding, but for now we'll do it 85. Okay, all right, so that's one thing, but this is also in the default page view controller. Okay, it's nothing new about it, but it has another interesting property, this page controller. Well, what is the interesting property? We can keep track of the page value. What do I mean by that? I mean this. Okay, so let's come over here and we'll do one thing. We'll do page. Here we would find a listener from it. So every page controller has a listener. We can attach to it. We would do add listener, as you can see. All right. And over here I'll do this semicolon, and then I'll have set state, and within set state I want to print something. Okay, well, before we print, let's go ahead and see another thing. Page controller dot page, so it has a default variable inside our property which is called page. Okay, all right, so this page is responsible for showing the page value, which is almost same as the index of our page builder. We know page builder has index, so in our case this is the index. I named it position. You can name it anything. Some people name it index. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so here this is almost the same as the page controller page value. I said almost. It means there's a difference. Okay, what's the difference? So here we'll see the difference. Now here I have declared a variable. I name it current page value. So I'll copy and put it over here. So get the value from it and put it there. So because we have a listener, so as we scroll or slide left and right, we'll get the value using this one, and then we save it in this variable, and then we can print it. So that's what we'll do now. Okay, now let's observe what happens. Well, why am I doing this thing? First thing, we need a listener to get the page value, and this page value is very crucial for scaling the slides up and down. Okay, so that's why we need to know what is this. So let's go ahead and run it. Okay, so this is what I have, but now let's see. As I scroll, wow, you see there's a log, and if you see that it increases the value if you scroll it to the left slowly. All right, for example, this one. So here this page value is 1, which is this one coming from this here, or I call it current page value. It came to 1, but it slowly came to 1, as you can see from here. 84, 86, 88, 90, like that. Okay, so it's pretty much changes for every digit, well, of course after decimal. All right, so that's what we learned. But there's another interesting thing. This page value is 1, which is also the index of this slide. The index of this slide is 0. Index of this slide is 2. So the index of this slide is the same as the page value of this page view builder. So that's what interesting thing we need to know. And we slide it. Now this is the index value 2. At the same time, page value is 2 too, but once again, it slowly increases, as you can see. Not like index, it increases immediately. Index is a sudden change, but page value changes slowly to bigger or slowly to smaller value. Okay, Of course, if you scroll it to the right, the value decrease. Just now we had this value called 2, and we slowly moved it to the right, and the value slowly decreased. That's what we learned. Okay, well, now after learning this thing, we can use this value to do animation. Okay, well, now we need to learn a little more other things. Okay, to do that, come over here. So we learned that early page value changes as you move left and right. Okay, all right, we also learned the one in the middle, that's the index value and page value, they're same. That's what I did over here. Okay, so now this page over here, this picture has highest scale factor 1 in our app. Of course, you can do it more. Here we just want 1. That means that it should take the same amount of space as the container. All right, okay. And another thing, so these two, they have the scale factor of 0.8. That means they're taking the 80% of the space of the how to say that part, okay, or that slide. I would say the same over here, it's taking 100%, or we say the scale is 1, it's taking 80%, or we say the scale is 0.8. So now there's a difference between this and this. What's the difference? The difference is 0.2. So our lowest scale factor is 0.8, biggest is 1, and the difference between lowest and biggest is 0.2. That's one interesting thing. And now this value would play an important role as we do the animation, like scaling up and down. Okay, well, how it will play, let's see. Well, we learned that over here the scaling factor well, is 1. Okay, the page value is 1 and index value is 1. Now look at this one, look at this equation. This is the math part and the other part is this one, and we have a little more, we'll see them later. So over here for this slide, imagine this slide or this page, index is 1 and page value is 1. So this part becomes 0 and the diff is multiplied here, but it is still 0. So we end up having 1. So this is the current scale, right? So this equation is true for this one. All right. Well, how about this slide? If this equation true or not, let's see. Well, here the index value is 0, but we learned that page value is here for all the slides you can see. So here the page value is 1. Now take a look at this information over here. 1 minus 0 for this one. So we end up having 1 over here, right? So 1 multiplied by 0.2. So we end up having 0.2. So 1 minus 0.2 is 0.8, right? So this equation works here and here, all right? Okay. So let's learn one thing. So if we are going to move from here to here or move from this point to the left, we can use this equation. This equation would help us. Well, first, the default value is 1, we just saw earlier, right? And we also saw that it could be, this equation could be also 0.8 over here because of page value 1 and index value 0, right? Well, now all we need to do it slowly. How can we do that slowly? I mean, as we move from this slide to this one, or this position to this position, slowly as we move, we can change this value slowly. How can we do that? As I said earlier, here the page value is 1, and index here is 0, but here index is 1. But anyway, so as we move like this, what will happen? Look at this. So if I want to move this one to the left, here I'll have page value 1, index value 1, this is 0. So I end up having 0 and then we get 1. But if we move a little bit, as we said earlier, over here, okay, let's see. As we move slightly, so the value increases immediately. You see, from 0 to 1.0 to 1.0035, 0075, 0.01, like that, right? Okay, so as I start to move it to the left, this value gets bigger and bigger. Well, first it is the difference would be very tiny, almost close to 0, but not 0. So something almost close to 0, and you multiply that one, that is almost 0 but not 0. So maybe the value would be here, say 0.99 first time. Second time, maybe as you scroll, 0.98. So slowly the scaling factor would change, right? For this one, this value. As you keep scrolling, the page value increases, because page value increases when you slide it to the left. Okay? So eventually there would be a difference. So there'd be, what's the difference? So here it would get bigger and bigger, but the index wouldn't change, right? So in that case, eventually we'll have 1 from here. 1 multiplied 0.2, that's 0.2. So we'll end up having 0.8. So, but this 0.8, we are doing it slowly using this page value, which we saw earlier, right? This current page value, the same variable, just name is, sorry, the name is slightly different, okay? So this equation works for few cases. Well, which one? For the current one, for this one, and as well as when you move it from this position to the left, okay? Well, so this is a very useful equation. Now the other one over here. Well, now when you move it from here to the right, this doesn't work, okay? So we have a new equation in that case. So we know that our scale factor is, so this one, this variable, which is 0.8, all right? So lowest scale factor, we'll have this one, plus page value, minus index, plus 1, then div. So we have a bit of difference from earlier equation. So here we see that scale factor is this one, 0.8, right? And page value minus index plus 1. Well, we have to know one thing. As we start to slide to the right, this index changes immediately and it becomes lower and lower by 1. So over here, if it was previously 1, and then if you move it to the right, this index would immediately become 0. If it was 2, it would become 1. All right, and page value slowly decreases as you move it to the right. It increases as you move it to the left. We saw it early, okay? So in case of moving it to the right, the middle one, it decreases immediately, I mean the index, and by 1, okay? So that's why we have plus 1. Otherwise we'll end up having here, say, minus value, okay? So here, as you want to move it to the right, what will happen? First, our page value would decrease, right? So if it was 0 if it was 1 over here, so page value would be, as I move it to the right, it would become first 0.99, 0.98, like that. But index would immediately become 0, as I said earlier, okay? So what will happen over here? So here, what I have, so 0.9, okay? And over here, I'll have 1, and well, this is immediately 0, okay? Now here I have this difference, okay? We are multiplying with this 0.2. Here we have this div 0.8. So what happens as you move it to the right? We said early the index becomes 0 immediately. I mean, if the previous index, the earlier it was 1, so it would reduce immediately, and page value would slowly reduce. So eventually this value first would be positive, but it will start from very small, say for example 0.99, 0.98, 0.96, it's like that. So eventually this would be also very small. Eventually this would be 0, then scale factor would end up having 0.8. So that's what we learned, and after having this, it should be pretty easy, all right? Okay, to do this algorithm. Well, to do that, now we need to come over here to our code, okay? And here's our simulator, and we need to declare some other variables, actually, which I already did. Our scale factor is 0.8, which we saw earlier over here, which is this one. And well, height we also need that, but it's nothing fancy, just to have the height for this one. So you can have it any height you want, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so that one thing. All right, now first thing we need to do over here within this build page item, once again this is called from over here page view builder. Okay, so over here we need to do a check on the index, so that's the thing we need to do. All right, so first we can set up a condition if index equal, say, car page dot floor. Now do remember current page we saw earlier over here that it has decimal value, but when we want to compare with the index we need to convert it to integer which doesn't have any decimal. Okay, so that's why we do this dot floor. Okay, if it's equal, then we'll do one thing, all right, which would mean this one, else if index equal cur value over here dot floor plus 1, which in this case would be this one. Okay, else if index equal cur value page dot floor minus 1, in this case it's referring to the index value, this one, else something different. Now over here this part is something that we don't see on the screen at all, like very far index or over here like that. Okay, so now as I said that this index refers to this one, I mean this condition. So here in general you want to have this, we can declare a variable and we call it cur scale equal 1.0. okay, well now you can think of, well, if this is 1 and this should have, according to this picture, 0.8, then maybe we can directly change it, right? We can directly do 0.8 instead of slowly doing this calculation. Let's go ahead and do it and check what happens over here. So here, say for now here I again do var cur scale equal 0.8. all right, and we'll do the same over here. Okay, and the same over here. All right, so for now this one is this, and this one would refer to this scaling, and this scaling, I mean you get the idea, right? So actually this one is over here and this one is over here, and there's the other one, the one we don't see in the screen. So we do have this current scaling factor, and actually we can go ahead and use them and see what happens. Okay, we are yet not using this condition. We'll do that slowly. Let's see, we'll work on this step by step. So here actually I want to declare a matrix 4. Why you want to do that? Because we are scaling up and down, and for this one Flutter has special function library which is called matrix 4. okay, so matrix 4 has this pattern inside which is 1 1 1. This refers to the x, this refers to the y, this refers to the z, and this is the overall value, I think. So now in our case we just want this value to be transformed or scaled up or down, so that would be the y value. Okay, so we'll just deal with only one value because we are not changing anything on the x direction, just scaling up or down like that. Okay, and also the height, because you see the height is not, I mean the starting point for this slide is over here, this one is over here, so they have different starting point for their height. Anyway, so now we'll come over here. Well, to do that, first I'll declare matrix 4. Now here I'll call it matrix, and new, all I can do matrix 4 dot identity. Okay, so this identity matrix is actually this one, and it has these 3 values, and we can change one of them it will change the value related to that coordinate. This is X coordinate, this is Y, this is Z. All right, okay. Okay, so once we have this one, now we can pass our scaling factor to this matrix. Okay, how to do that? So here we can simply do matrix equal matrix 4 dot. Here we have a special function that we can use, which is called diagonal 3 values. So actually it takes 3 values. Well, I think it calls it diagonal because of this shape, and it's more like a diagonal, right, in the matrix. So it gets that 3 values, now x, y, z, but here x, whatever the x value is there, we are not going to change that, but we are going to change y. So here we do current scale. Now z is also 1. So we're not going to change this, because whatever the value you provide over here, that would be multiplied. So we are passing y value. So y value would be multiplied with whatever the value currently there. Okay. So we are not changing x and z. Okay. All right. So that's one thing. Now here, what I could simply do, I could copy this one, and I'll put it 1 here. Actually, we also need this one. Okay, and this value, what I would do, I would put it over here. Okay, and over here as well. Okay, so now we want our padding widget, which is this one, and this one holds this container, and this one, we want it to be wrapped around a transform widget. And if we can do that, then we can use this matrix value, which is transformed from here. Okay, so we'll simply wrap it around another widget, and we'll call it transform. Now you might get an error because it takes a property which called transform. Okay, and transform takes a matrix. Okay, so the matrix we just have, so we'll pass this one. If you hover over on it, you'll see it takes a transform property which type is matrix 4, and over here this type is matrix 4. Okay, now let's go ahead and check the current status. Well, it looks like it did work, right? Yeah, because it's 0.8 right now, pretty much what we saw early over here, but unless the just position is a bit different, right? It's up over here in our app. Okay, all right, anyway, so now let's come over here. Let's try to slide. As you see, it doesn't change quickly like earlier we saw at the beginning, immediately, I mean slowly. It changes suddenly, but all we want, it should change as I move left and right. It should change as I'm changing. Okay, but it's not. Okay, so that's where this equation which we saw early comes in. This one. All right, so that's what we need to do now. So we'll come over here. For this one, we don't want hard-coded one. We want something like this, the one we had over here. Okay, so what we do, we just go ahead and copy this one, because we know that early this works for this and changing from here to here, and we also learned that it changes slowly as the page changes. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll go ahead and put it there. Okay, but instead of page value, we'll replace it with current page value. Okay, and here I do have a diff, but as you saw, diff is 1 minus this one, right? This is diff, so maybe I can just copy this one, and we'll put it here. Instead of diff, I'll put it here. Okay, now let's go ahead and run it. Let's see if it works on. Oh, it's already working, as you see. Yes, it works for the next one. Okay, but this one has sudden change. So it's already working. Now if you go like this, let's see, it also works, but it changes suddenly. So the middle one. Okay, all right. So now how to solve this issue? Like if you go over here, okay, so it shouldn't change like that. So we saw early that if we move from this position to the left, we can use this equation, right? Okay, so what I'll do, I'll copy this one and put it over here. Instead of hard-coded 0.8, now here of course I can change the current page value like this, and the scale factor is this one. Okay, now let's go ahead and run it. Okay, now let's see. Yes, it's already working, it looks like. Okay, now let's do this one. You see, it's already working. So the simple math that solved our problem. Yes, so it's already working. Okay, now, well, say for now we don't work with this because this already pretty much working, because this works from left to right, and from this one to here, and it also slowly changes if we change like this. Okay, so looks like we don't need to change anything over here. Well, now how to deal with this position? Okay, because as we saw early, the position should be in the middle, right? Okay, well, for that one we can use another scaling factor. So based on this scaling factor, we'll create another scaling factor and we'll call it cur trans. Okay, this one. Well, now just now we saw that the height, I mean we declared the height at the top over here. I think we remember that our height is over here. Okay, so we can manipulate this height. Okay, either it's 0, when it's 0 it's at the top, or if it's not 0, so it has some value, say 10, it will come down a little bit. But for this one, for the current index, we want it to be 0. So we have this equation. So what we'll do over here, we'll do 1 minus current scale, okay, and divided by 2. Now we remember that current scaling factor is 1, right, for this slide. So 1 minus 1 is 0, so the height is 0. The height is 0, it means it would start from there, right? Okay, and as we did that, we need to pass it to this matrix, and we'll do that soon. Don't worry how we do that. And we can also change the scaling, this transform factor over here. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll just simply copy it and put it over here. Now this scaling factor also works for this position. It will work. Why? Do remember that here in default this current scale is 0.8, right? 1 minus 0.8 is 0.2, 1 minus here, so we'll have 0.2 divided by 2 and then this height. So here we'll end up having 2 something like that, I guess. Okay, so what did it do? It would put it down a little bit, okay? All right, so now what I could do, now we need to pass it to this matrix. So first we scale it and then we change the position. So to do that, simply here we can use dot operator, double dots. I have a tutorial on this if you don't know how it works. And here I'll call another function which is called set translation raw, this one. It has XYZ value. Well, now for X is 0. 0 means the position over here, not the scaling factor. So we are not changing anything on the X, whatever it is there, it's 0. But we want to change the Y. So Y, we want to change it to this one. Okay. All right. Now here I'll copy this one and I'll just simply put it there. Okay. Or like this. Now let's go ahead and run it. As you see, it's already worked. Yes, it works for this. It works for this, but it doesn't work for this, okay? Which is this one? This is this one over here, okay? Well, what we could do, we can just simply copy everything from here and put it there, okay? Let's see. Yes, it's already working. Okay, now we have a bit of problem, as you see. Okay, it works like this. That's okay. Let's slide through. So it goes up and down. So now we have problem. But first, why this part works here? Well, earlier we saw that this equation is correct for this one, and for this one it's also correct when you slide from this position to the left. So the same equation actually here, nothing changed. We just directly put it here. So nothing should change, okay? But it created a new problem. Well, now what is the new problem? So now this condition is okay over here, as you see. So now this is very cranky or critical over here. Well, let me move it. So right now on the screen I have these 3 visible slides, right? And they're all following these rules. But if I move to the left and bring a new one, this condition is not really true for that one, or I mean not really well calculated. Let's do it. So you do that, it's okay. So that slide at the end, very end, is not visible yet, but it should follow the last condition, which is else. Now you take a look. Yes, so this is something that was invisible at the beginning, but later become visible. So this follows this condition over here, but looks like we need to modify it. So over here, scaling is not the problem. So what is the problem? Here, the problem is the height. Scaling is actually 0.8%, right? Okay. So the height problem. So how do you change it? Now, of course, you can have hard-coded 0.8. I'm sorry. So current scale is 0.8, which is okay, but the height is the problem. But now here, just like earlier, here we could do 2 dots, set transitional row. Sorry about that. And then here, maybe let's try 0.8 and let's try 0. Now let's see on this. So hard-coded value doesn't work. So we still need to find a way to work on this. So now here, instead of 0.8, let's see. If we change it to height, the height, whatever height we had, okay, multiplied by 1 minus scale factor, and let's divide it by 2. Okay, now it's working. Okay, so the sliding is very smooth. So once again, this all worked, this sliding and slowly animation, this slow animation and transformation, it all worked because of this simple math over here, okay, and which we saw early in our slide over here. Now once again, the same result can't be achieved if you just use a plugin, because plugin doesn't support this one. Now if you see this one over here, they also scale up and down based on this. Anyway, so if you learned something, don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. But remember though, it was not a tutorial on how to build a page builder. It's more advanced. Thank you so much.